so that we may act in the best interest of our people, our neighbors, and our country. All this we ask so we may serve our community with fairness and respect, putting their needs before all.
Thank you. We can be seated. Elizabeth, please read the roll, please.
Commissioner Casey,
Present.
Commissioner Jain,
Here.
Chair Saleme,
Here.
Commissioner Becker,
Here.
Commissioner Biagini,
Here.
Commissioner Cherukuru,
Here,
Commissioner Hero.
Here.
Thank you.
Since we're all present, we don't need to have any motions for excusals. Excuse me. Commissioner Cherukuru, could you read in the procedures, please?
thank you, Chair. Declaration of Commission procedures. Public hearings are conducted by the Chair in accordance with the following procedures. The Chair of the Commission directs all activity during the hearings. All comments shall be addressed to the Commission. Any item on this agenda may be continued to a subsequent hearing. Applicants will be allocated up to 10 minutes to present and justify proposals following staff presentation of the item. Other speakers will be given up to 2 minutes. The applicant is allocated up to 5 minutes for rebuttal of comments. No additional comments will be accepted upon the closing of the public hearing, although the Commission reserves the right to direct questions to any speaker on any matter. Special procedures, time limits may be applied to any items as prescribed by the Chair. Appeal of Commission actions must be filed in writing within 7 calendar days. That's the end of procedures, Chair.
Thank you. Copies of the current agenda and staff reports for each of the items on the agenda are available from the Planning Division office on the Friday afternoon preceding the meeting and available online. So we can move on to continuances and exceptions. As part of the meeting allows for applicants, members of the public, or other interested parties to request an item be continued without hearing, withdrawn, or taken out of order. Are there any requests from the applicants, the public, or the Commission for a continuance or exception of any of the items on tonight's agenda?
No, we've not received any request for a continuance or an exception.
Okay. And since we have a full commission, I don't need to explain the exceptions and continuance. Okay, consent calendar. We will now move to the consent calendar. Secretary Cherukuru, could you read the procedure?
Today, we have only one item on the consent calendar, and that is the Planning Commission meeting minutes of June 15, 2020.
Okay, I'll read the other part above, which is the procedure for the consent calendar is as follows. Consent calendar items may be enacted, approved, or adopted by one motion unless requested to be removed by anyone for discussion or explanation. If any member of the Planning Commission staff, the applicant, or member of the public wishes to comment on a consent calendar item or would like the item to be heard on the regular agenda, make the request now. And items listed on the consent calendar with the associated file numbers constitute a public hearing item. And Commissioner Cherukuru already read off the item for tonight. So is there anyone that wanted to discuss this separately?
I just wanted to, Chair, if you don't mind.
I see the hands up. Yeah.
I just wanted to remind folks that I was absent excused on June 15th, so I won't be voting on any motions regarding the minutes.
Okay. Commissioner Jain?
I move to approve.
I
Okay.
second, Priya.
Okay. Commissioner Becker?
I was going to second, but Priya beat me to it.
She jumped in, yes. So we have the motion and the second. and we'll move on to the vote.
The motion is to approve the meeting minutes. Commissioner Casey,
Yes.
Commissioner Jain,
Yes.
Chair Saleme,
Yes.
Commissioner Becker,
Yes.
Commissioner Biagini, you are recusing, you're abstaining from voting. Commissioner Cherukuru,
Yes.
Commissioner Hero,
I also abstain.
thank you.
All right, the motion passes with abstentions. Public presentations. So are there any members of the public that would like to briefly address the commission on any item not on the agenda? Elizabeth?
No, there's no one here for any presentation.
Okay, so we're moving ahead pretty quickly. So we will move on to the public hearing. Public hearing action on the comprehensive sign program for parcels 4 and 5 for the related Santa Clara project. So I guess we'll have staff present and switch over to the
Sorry, Chair, I had my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. It gets buried in the when the window expands. Commissioner Jain.
Yeah, I had a question for our attorney. We're making a motion to recommend to City Council. So will we run into a due process, Commissioner Becker and I, will we run into a due process issue?
Thank you, Commissioner Jain. The short answer is no. As you know, due process is a concern when a quasi-judicial decision is at play, because you can't both make a recommendation on something and decide something when due process is in effect, because by making a recommendation, you basically made up your mind before you get to the decision-making stage. Due process applies to quasi-judicial decisions, things like variances, CUPs, basically whenever you're applying an existing set of laws to a set of facts. Here, what you're doing is a legislative action, and a legislative action is when you are basically setting new laws. Due process for legislative actions is the ballot box. So you are free to participate both tonight and at the City Council meeting because this is a legislative action. There's no due process concern. You get 2 bites at this apple.
Okay, I actually reviewed the presentation for the minutes from June 15th and where that was the case in Sacramento due to bias. And I guess my question here is, I'm still a little confused about whether something is quasi-judicial, because we're not really making new rules, right? We've already approved the MCP, and now we're just verifying that this comports to the MCP.
Well, remember, the related city place project is exempt from the city's sign ordinance. None of the city's sign code provisions apply. None of the height limits, none of the quantity limits, none of the size limits. What you're doing tonight is basically adopting a new sign code for the city place project. You are establishing those standards, and that is what it does in detail. It sets forth height restrictions, quantity restrictions, size restrictions, lighting limitations. You are establishing new laws or making a recommendation on it tonight. The council will be adopting those new laws that apply specifically to this project.
I see. Thank you.
I have my hand raised.
Yes, I see it. Commissioner Biagini?
I'm having some technical difficulties where I cannot see what is being presented right now. My main screen just has that icon of a body and that's it. In other words, if you start playing a PowerPoint, I'm not seeing it. I can bring up the PowerPoint on my desktop, which is right next to me, but I don't know what the problem is. So I don't know.
Okay.
What to tell you. Wait a minute. I just touched on the button and it seemed to work. I lower my hand. Sorry, technical difficulties.
Welcome to the 21st century technical difficulties. Okay, I see that Commissioner Becker has raised his hand as well.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry about that. So can Xander, can you finish what you were just saying about what we would be able to do as voting? I got booted, my internet had to reboot. So another technical issue of these types of meetings. But you said something because I came in right when you were talking about, oh, you can, and then I was like, what? So can you finish that again?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Basically, all I said was that the action tonight is a legislative action. When you're taking a legislative action, it's okay to both make the recommendation and the final decision, because there's no concern that you will have pre-decided something. For legislative actions, you're passing a new law, and it's okay to have basically some preconceived notions of what should be in a law. I mean, as council members elect, I'm sure that was part of your campaign, was articulating what you think the laws of the city should be. So for legislative actions, due process concerns do not apply. It's only for quasi-judicial decisions. You are free to both make a recommendation and adopt the final action, because basically you're adopting the new sign code for the City Place project.
Okay, cool. Thank you for clearing that up. Appreciate it.
But the final comment was the best. You get 2 bites of the apple. Right.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So I guess we are at a point now to move on to the actual presentation.
Thank you. We're just putting up the slides. Good evening, Planning Commissioners. I'm Rena Brio, Planning Manager, and tonight's item is the comprehensive sign program for the related Santa Clara project, specifically for parcels 4 and 5. Trying to advance the slides. Okay, great. Will I be able to control it? Should be able to change. Okay, thank you. So some background for the project, and this is the related Santa Clara project overall. So in June 28th of 2016, in addition to certifying the project EIR that was prepared for the project, the City Council adopted a variety of entitlements for the related Santa Clara project, including a general plan text amendment, an amendment to the city's climate action plan, a rezoning of the 240-acre project site from public, quasi-public, and commercial park to planned development master community zoning district, as well as a master community plan with particular conditions of approval. Also included in the entitlements is a deposition and development agreement and a development agreement with the city and related Santa Clara. So in accordance with the procedures that are set forth in Appendix C of the MCP, the development area plans were submitted to the city and approved by the City Council for the first 2 phases of the project. And both of these development area plans for phases 1 and 2 came in front of the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission provided recommendations in the spring and fall of this year. And those development area plans really addressed the development footprint, setbacks, and the massing of the project. So tonight, why we're here is because we have and we're going to be using the term CSP because it's much shorter than saying comprehensive sign program, for parcels 4 and 5. So just to give everyone a frame of reference, parcels 4 and 5 are orange and yellow, and you can see them on the slide there. They do comprise the city center of the project, which is the most dynamic, pedestrian-friendly aspect of the related Santa Clara project. And tonight, the charge really is to look for the sign program to be in conformance to the master community plan. So Chapter 7 of the MCP calls out the vision and sign typologies for the project, tenant and advertising and sponsorship signs within the project area. However, the MCP requires that specific design, placement, and numerical standards for the signage be developed through a subsequent CSP, calling out one CSP for parcels 4 and 5, which is what we're going to talk about tonight, which can constitute the city center, and then a subsequent CSP for parcels 1 and 2, which will occur at a later date. So as part of the CSP conformance, we're going to talk about some of the explicit elements of the MCP that we'll be looking for conformance for. But also, these signs are really intended to further the city's objective to create this vibrant, mixed-use urban core that creates that dynamic environment that is envisioned through the MCP. So the MCP defines the type of signage principles that are to be included in the CSP. That includes the fact that these signs should be coordinated, they should have complementary tenant signage, there should be a wayfinding system, that these signs should be of high quality, high legibility, incredibly durable, and have civic art potential. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the types of signs that are covered in the CSP. We first have project signage, and what project signage is intended to do is give individuals who are really outside of the project itself information that this is the related Santa Clara project, that this is the place, and how to really direct people to related Santa Clara. So the signages are mostly on the borders of the project, and we have major gateway signs, minor gateway signs, and then ceremonial signs. And many of these signs are really intended to have like art elements included and really give individuals a flavor of the entire project site. There's also directional signage that's included as really project signage that help people find their way to and through the site. So included in the CSP are types of tenant signs. So this is going to tell visitors who are the occupants of these buildings. And the types of signs that are available for tenants, and many of our planning commissioners are familiar with these signs, but I do know we have some new planning commissioners as well. But we have freestanding monument signs, which aren't attached to the building. We have building mountain signs, which can be architecturally integrated and flush with the building itself. We have storefront signs, which really speak to the pedestrian level interaction with the building. We have projecting signs, some people call them fin signs, that actually come off the building and project onto, for instance, a sidewalk and give some sort of dimensionality to the signage. Then there's super graphic and building integrated signs, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that a couple slides down, but that's a modern type of signage application. And then we have rooftop signs. So close to the top of the building or at the top of the rooftop itself, signs that really showcase usually the main occupant of the building, the main tenant. So in the related Santa Clara project, there are also opportunities for sponsorship and advertising. And really consistent with the character of a city center and an entertainment retail district, some of this off-site advertising is really intended to occur in the blue area that you're seeing here. It's the city center core sub-district. And I should say actually all of the off-site advertising is intended to occur in this blue area on the map. So the way that it's proposed to be regulated is that the offsite signage, which is within the subcore district, actually the physical sign is located in the district and it faces inward, that signage could be allowed to go up to 40 feet in height. However, if they're within 100 feet of a residential building or they use animation, then that signage would be limited to 12 feet in height. And really something to have a good visual on what this is signs that if you're walking down San Francisco or Seattle, you might see them. They're often kiosk signs that share information, wayfinding, but also switch and have advertising that's included. That's a common application that I've seen in urban areas. So that's a way to possibly envision sort of the intent of what could be happening with these sort of detached off-site advertising signs. And then if the signs are located outside of the city subcore district, but facing the district, so really on the perimeters of that blue area, but outside the blue area, facing the blue area, those signs would be limited no matter what to 12 feet in height. So the MCP is really explicit about allowing off-site signage in the form of billboards on Tasman Drive. So consistent with the MCP, there are billboards that are being proposed through this CSP that are facing Tasman, and those would be digital signs that would have off-site content. And I should say this as I'm sort of using words to describe images here. Our applicant related is going to be doing a presentation to kind of show the types of signage that the CSP is really intended to create. So after this presentation, they'll be showing actual visuals of intended signs. So digital signage, this is a modern contemporary environment, and really digital signage applications are available for all the different types of signs except for a few exceptions. The major gateway signs, which I mentioned, mark the sort of approach for individuals who are off-site, temporary signs, and then super graphics, which I'm going to describe in a little bit. And that digital signs must follow the lighting regulations in the MCP and also what's being proposed as part of the CSP. And I'm going to get into that in a second. So in the MCP, there are specifically lighting character zones that are called out. And the MCP was intended to be the implementing document to really take, some of the vision, I should say, for the project and put it into a bigger framework. But here, the lighting character zones help guide what kind of illumination can occur and where. So character zones A and B are the most restrictive, and no digital signs or lighting can occur in those zones. And that's really because those zones are either areas where there may be more sensitive uses or closer to habitat, because as you know, we have some creeks that border this project on both sides of the project. And the CSP luminance limits are included, and they're really proposed below to be differentiated between weekday evenings and weekend evenings. So on weekdays, having those digital signs stop 20 minutes before 10 p.m. And then on weekends, and weekends also including special holidays such as New Year's Eve, 4th of July, and days that there are events at Levi's Stadium, that the digital signage illumination would be cut off 20 minutes before 2 a.m. And once again, these hours are intended to limit all the illumination, and so nothing can be extended past these hours. So super graphics are a type of image that is projected onto a wall or could be printed on vinyl or mesh and other material. And it can be with text, it can also be artwork. And that's something that's actually attached to the building itself or projected onto the building. And what's proposed through the CSP is that super graphics are potentially allowed on buildings of a substantial height, so over 65 feet in height, or buildings where, or I should say, or parking garages that are over 3 feet in 3 levels. And I should be explicit here that these are only possible on non-residential buildings. And the way that the proposed durations for super graphics is potentially longer durations where you can have up to 120 consecutive days, or shorter durations that are actually related to special events. And there would be no more than 35 consecutive days per the event, and then no building would be allowed to have 120 days total of any super graphics displayed on it. So the CSP is the guiding document. However, there will have to be a permitting process for every sign that comes forward, with a couple exceptions. Signs are proposed to require a separate sign permit, so you can come to the planning division, file a sign permit application, and we can review individual signs. Also, a building sign plan could be a potential way to review a package of signs that would cover one or multiple buildings. And a BSP could be submitted as part of these architectural reviews for the DAPs, or they could be their own sign separate application. And temporary event signs can also require an application when they're proposing 10 or more signs per an event. So temporary signs are exempt if they're fewer than 10 signs, and the types of signs that would be temporary or common for temporary are construction signs, real estate signs, and leasing signs, pre-opening signs, and then, once again, special event signs that have fewer than 10 signs associated with them. The environmental impact report for the project really analyzed all the impacts associated with the implementation of the master community plan, including signage, and thus the EIR addresses any of the impacts associated with the CSP. And the staff recommendation is for the Planning Commission to recommend to the City Council approval of the comprehensive signage program for parcels 4 and 5. So with that concludes the staff recommendation, and I can take some questions now, or you can also ask staff questions after you see the applicant's presentation.
Oh, I see early hands up, so maybe we can take them in pieces. Commissioner Biagini was first.
And may I interrupt? I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Before Commissioner Biagini speaks, I just wanted to mention, this is your opportunity to ask staff questions. I'm joined tonight by our outside counsel, Anna Shimko and Eric Phillips. Those of you who've been on the Planning Commission a while know them both well. Anna's been working with the city, representing us in the City Place project for more than 5 years, and successfully defended the city when it was sued by the city of San Jose on the environmental document. Eric has been instrumental in drafting the sign program that is before you tonight. So I'm going to be relying upon both of them heavily if you have any legal questions about the CSP. I just wanted to mention that they're here as you start to ask your questions of staff. And we can answer those questions now or later in the evening. And I apologize for the interruption.
I suspect we'll have both now and later. Yeah, Commissioner Biagini?
All right, I have 2 questions. You can hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, the first question gets a little bit into the weeds, but when we talk about wayfinding, will it include, again, this is a bit into the weeds, will it include such things as direct you to parking, including where the electrical outlets for cars are and or bicycles?
Commissioner Biagini, that's a really good question. I think that's probably best for the applicant, but that definitely fits in the category of wayfinding signs.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask the applicant that, or the applicant can just mention it when they do their presentation. Now, my next question, I want to have a further understanding of the offsite advertising. And when we talk about sponsorship and advertising, are we talking about such things as Santa Clara Art and Wine Festival, Santa Clara tree lighting? And if so, would those be, let me go back to the slide that talked about major minor. Would those be things that are considered minor gateway type signs?
Oh.
Or can you kind of explain that a little further for me? Because I'm trying to figure out what they are.
Yeah, so offsite advertising, you know, the other way, there are different terms that people use. Digital billboards, electronic billboards, this is when people are actually putting information out about something or someone, usually to promote or market the brand. And I think that what you're talking about is more aligned with sort of public service announcements, maybe community board kind of information. So that's not necessarily what the particular proposal right now is including. It's really about, and the MCP did allow for these digital signs, or I should say offsite advertising opportunities, digital offsite advertising opportunities. So yeah, so I think the messages that you're referring to could be included in a format like that, but that's not necessarily the intent, the main intent of what these offsite signs are intending to do.
Yeah, and there's a reason I asked that question, because there are certain events that are citywide that may not be taking place at related, but may be of interest for those in related. So there is an opportunity there, I imagine is the answer to my question.
And let me just draw the distinction between on-site and off-site. On-site, you're advertising something that takes place at City Place, meaning
Exactly.
the exact parcel or elsewhere within parcels 4 and 5. Off-site means you're advertising an event that takes place across the city or in another city.
Like art and wine, right?
Yes, unless you're having the Art and Wine Festival at City Place, in which case it'd be. But yeah, the off-site advertising is restricted to the billboards on Tasman and within the city center core to inward-facing signs.
All right, I yield.
Thank you. Commissioner Jain, I believe, and then Cherukuru.
Yeah, I saw in the CSP there's a provision for real-time parking info, the VMS system. And is that a thing that tells you where the empty parking spots are? Because this project reduced parking significantly, and I'm concerned that people are going to be driving around looking for parking. So that's my first question. The second concerns the 4 billboards on Tasman East. When I first joined the Planning Commission, we had billboards that were being operated by Clear Channel, and we had a provision in there that something like 10% of the screen time would be available for city announcements and nonprofits and public service announcements. And I don't see any provision for that here. I know that in the packet, they talked about AES-1 and AES-2, the light pollution, and it said that it was significant, and that it says that with mitigation measure AES 2.1, installation of low profile, low intensity lighting directed downward to minimize light and glare. I didn't see any reference to that in the CSP. The only thing I saw there was the prohibition on hotspots and light leakage are prohibited. I didn't understand what that meant. So those are my 3 questions that I have.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Jain. And for the first question that you have regarding really finding parking spaces and signage that gives active displays of parking spaces. I think that's a really great question for the applicant. That's something that would be allowable through the CSP, but I think we should talk to the applicant about their intention. For your question number 2 regarding billboards, and thank you. You had actually asked this question in advance, and staff was trying to do a comprehensive search of the various different digital signs and offsite advertising signs, and some of the information we found is definitely consistent with what you said. With some of the signs, we just weren't able to have a analysis of all these signs. So there are signs that have come in front of the Planning Commission which were conditioned, as you had explained, with a 10% sort of PSA. And that's not necessarily proposed right now, but it is something that, should the Planning Commission be interested in it, we would like some general direction to work with staff to bring that forward to the City Council, to just give some more time to explore that with the applicant, as well as look at just the wide variety of different applications that have come forward.
And then there was the
Yes.
issue
Yes.
of the light pollution.
Right. So, yes, go on, Commissioner Jain. Anything else? I was going to respond to that.
Well, I mean, we have friends who live in Portola Valley, and when we go up to visit them, Levi Stadium is lit up like, just like a mini sun. Even from Portola Valley, you can see Levi Stadium from there. So I'm very concerned about the amount of light pollution generated by this project.
So, thank you, Commissioner Jain. So, as you had mentioned correctly, this was a significant impact that the environmental impact report disclosed. There are some mitigation measures because it's a significant impact that was not mitigated fully. We do know that it is going to be a significant impact. However, the MCP gives a lot more direction around lighting. The mitigation that you referred to is applicable, where lighting will not be directed at any specific areas, but signage by its nature cannot necessarily always be directed downward. The MCP does have the lighting character zones, which gives a lot more specificity in terms of, where can digital signage be, where can it not be, and it was much more explicit about guidance for illumination than maybe just even the EIR itself. But where we're really looking to for guidance on specifics is the MCP, and there are pages about lighting and really the appropriateness of lighting within the MCP itself. And I should mention that the EIR covered the MCP, so it was taken into consideration when the EIR was written to intentionally approve the MCP.
And yeah, I reread the MCP and I saw very little discussion of that.
So, Commissioner, this is Eric Phillips, Special Counsel for the City. If I could help add to the response. In section 2.3 of the CSP that's before you, there are some specific standards related to signage illumination, as Rena was describing. Signs that have external light sources are required to be shielded and directed to minimize any sort of light spillage and ensure that only the surface of the sign itself is illuminated. And then both the CSP and the MCP itself, as Rena also mentioned, include specific light performance standards for the hours that they're allowed to operate, how bright they're allowed to be. So the combination of the limited amount of light that's allowed to be produced by the signs under the MCP, and then the way that they would be directed, shielded, and illuminated in a focused way, as implemented here through the CSP that's before you tonight, we think is consistent with both the the MCP and the mitigation measures that were in the original EIR.
Thank you.
Mr. Cherukuru.
Thank you, Chair. So signage and branding wayfinding is a project that I've worked very closely on, so it still brings up a lot of good memories. So quick questions on one, universal signage. We are, my kids asked me the other day, why would anybody want to come to Santa Clara as a world destination? And I'm hoping someday we can tout this project and say, hey, it is a happening place. But it speaks a lot to then what we are trying to bring into our community. And that what I'm significantly lacking here is one, universal signage that you can either just depict the intent with graphics that are universally recognizable. The other is multilingual. So our community is a very diverse population, and I do not see any reference even in the goals or in the purpose in the document that was one of the interests of this project to be all inclusive, to be a multilingual, to be a universally accessible place for people. So just a quick recommendation is to see how you can incorporate universal into the design guidelines, and you may have to actually come up with those icons or symbols that speak universally. The numeric system is great. It works when you're within a building. You can definitely identify the address, and then it's easy for the person within a building. But from the branding standpoint and from the language access standpoint, I still think there's areas of improvement in this document. The other question I had is on the touch screens and your wayfinding, the ability for somebody in a wheelchair to be able to know how to go, where to go. That wayfinding should translate to a mapping process that can actually be multilingual, even better, because you can always change digitally much easier than physical. But it has to be consistent with the actual street layout, with the actual building layout, with almost like a mall, but in a multilingual context as well. And to see if that can come to a phone, so that that person can say, okay, I'm at this intersection, how do I get to my destination? And if this is a mile walk or within a mile, they can actually have that direction come to their phone with just an email or a phone away. Those were my immediate questions. I do want some futuristic thoughts with the applicant, so I'll reserve for later. But if you want to respond, Rena?
Thank you, Commissioner Cherukuru. Those are really great comments. And I would say that what we're talking about today are the regulations, if you will, the box in which Related has to play with. And the applicant fully intends to brand this place as a special, unique place. And I think that they won't be able to tell you what that brand is right now. They're working through that. But I have a lot of confidence that that is their full intent with this whole sign program, is to really distinguish it, not just in Santa Clara, but in the entire Bay Area and maybe even in the country. So I think that the applicant can maybe speak to some of that vision, but we're probably not going to see that tonight, because that's not really what our charge is. Our charge is what's the sandbox that they can play in.
And to that, Rena, I do want to framework that sandbox to be that it be universally accessible, that it have a multilingual component.
Yeah, and
that it have an all-inclusive, special needs, disabled, of all capabilities. Signage is so critical, and I know because I personally worked on it, so I know how the end user can perceive, and it can give a whole different vibe when it's not done right. So just putting that sandbox with these goals.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate that, Commissioner Cherukuru, and I really appreciate, the aspect of wanting multilingual signs. I do think your point is a really excellent one about how digital signs provide less of the need for a commitment to a static message. And that allows for messaging to different communities. So, or just people, same community, just people who speak different languages. So, maybe the applicants can speak to that. I do know, because I've also had a little bit of background in wayfinding, and there are firms that really focus on helping people navigate spaces, and maybe the applicant can talk to you about that. They've engaged a really great signage firm, and I do know that we can put that forward as a principle that's important. That's already in the MCP though, but I can tell you that I have a full appreciation for how challenging and difficult it is, that there's a whole consulting world related to wayfinding. So thank you, and the applicant can maybe speak a little bit more to the specifics of your question.
And
may I just
this
add-
is Eric Phillips again, sorry,
Go ahead, Eric.
one additional comment on that is in section 3.6 of the plan, which addresses wayfinding. There is a specific direction to include ADA compliance voice activation and some concept along the lines of what you were introducing, but potentially looking at that and incorporating more direction there might be part of your recommendation. And as Rena said, I'm sure we'll see how these get implemented through the applicant's presentation in just a little bit.
Thank you, Eric. Go ahead, Abe.
Oh, thank you. And just to address your first question about the universally recognizable signage, both the MCP and this CSP talk about one of the guiding principles being coordinated project signage. On page 5, it talks about how they will use coordinated signage to promote the city place identity, and that the signage would be based on a consistent, unified design motif, which should add to a cohesive, consistent look at city place. So they've got that in the principles of the CSP. The CSP itself, though, is more concerned with really the physical standards as opposed to the sign content. So the intent is there, but it would be difficult in this document to mandate, and the logo shall be this logo. It's clear they want to provide that sort of universal recognition.
And thank you, Xander. I do appreciate that. What I was trying to allude to is universal symbols, globally recognized, are almost like ADA signs. When you go to a restroom, when you know where parking is, when you know where a wedding will occur, those are a restaurant, those are symbols that, in principle, you can look at it very similar to just an ADA sign, that it be universal. That's what I'm trying to emulate. Not that it stands out just so that somebody walking in says, oh, related has its own symbology. I'm not trying to allude to that. At some point, if there's a lactation room that's accessible for a member of the public who wants to feed their child there, that's a universal symbol. If there is a special needs all-inclusive restroom or an all-inclusive playground that has, elements, that is a special universal symbol. And so I wanted to include in the principle that there would be an intent to meet universal signage or multilingual aspects of the community and of the city. That's what I'm trying to put in words that are generic, but then can be honed in as part of your design and actual, you'll get permits that show it all. But to give that principle, that's my intent to advise this at this time.
Good. And I think adding a statement about universal access to the list of wayfinding descriptions.
Yeah.
Appropriate.
Thank you, Zan. I yield, Chair.
Okay. Oh, it's my turn. I had a very niche question. In Los Angeles, I actually came across a situation where they had a signage limitation for digital signs that limited the size to a certain height and width. And tenants of a particular shopping mall found that to be limiting. So they got a cooperative together, 3 separate tenants adjacent to each other, placed their signs next to each other, and then digitally cooperated to have much larger rotating content moving across all 3 signs. I know this is unlikely in this situation, but has there been any investigation to limit egregious use of cooperative signage that could exceed all the normal height standards by combining signs?
Chair Saleme, that's an interesting question. And I think that it's a little relieved in this situation because we have a master developer for the project. So they're thinking about the entire site as well as the individual tenants right now. And it's not different building owners that are trying to vie for signage opportunities, seeing some being diminished by others getting, we have a master developer. So I'm not entirely sure if that's going to be
Probably
as much of an
doesn't apply.
issue here.
Yeah, it doesn't apply here. I just hope that it's not, this is not used as the full template for every development project so that they can say, oh, there's a loophole. We'll just put KFC, McDonald's, and Burger King on 3 separate signs, and then we're going to blend them. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be an issue. I just was wondering. I didn't see any mention of limitations on aggregated signs. So is there any expectation that some of the digital signage will be adjacent and therefore have that option of scrolling horizontally or exceeding the normal font heights because they can spread it out over 3? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I just was
I think
wondering
that
if
when
was covered.
we looked at the sign program pretty critically, and like I said, because we have a master developer here, they're just being straightforward with what they intend for every building, and they don't have that all mapped out yet, but I don't think they're creatively trying. They were just being explicit with what they want, right? So, and we've worked to kind of see what's reasonable in that, realm of request. But I think under other circumstances, we would be concerned about potential loopholes where people are trying to get more than what's being specified.
So each development, let me ask one corollary to that. So, but each development that we entertain signage concerns with will have their own review. So this may just be a moot point. I'm not trying to belabor a silly example, but it was something that raised some hackles in a mall down in Redondo Beach where I used to live. And so that was kind of interesting. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Chair Saleme. I just wanted to also offer that the way that the area for signs that were attached to individual walls is calculated is based on the aggregate area. So in some ways, under this regulatory scheme, it wouldn't matter if they had 1 large sign or 3 small signs. Their overall area limitation for signs affixed to the buildings and the walls is capped at the same amount regardless of how they choose to array them and how they apportion them between individual building tenants and individual signs. So there's less opportunity, I think, for that sort of gamesmanship because there's actually a little bit more flexibility built into the plan to accommodate within a standard that the city was comfortable allowing.
Well, that's good because the last thing you want is infighting amongst tenants over sign issues. You don't want, tenant A complaining that tenant B has double the signage. That's awesome. Okay, thank you. That was my only question. I guess we can move on to, since no other hands are raised, we can move on to applicant or the developer presentation.
And if we're just going to take a second here, I'm going to get the presentation loaded up. And we're going to have Andy Davey, who works on behalf of Related, to start the presentation. And hold on one second.
Yeah, and if Elizabeth or someone will remind me at the end of the presentation that if there's any other public interest in commenting, let me know. I'm only seeing one person in the attendees list.
Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Andrew Davey. I'm with Selbert Perkins Design. We are what they call an environmental graphics design firm. It's our, our bread and butter. It's our main discipline as a design firm. Our main clients are developers, cities, airports, stadiums, everything that you need a sign for or need wayfinding for and need to carry that brand throughout the development. That's typically our charge. We've had a good working relationship with Related, and in developing this comprehensive sign program, we were in charge of coming up with the design, helping with the verbiage, helping with the locations of everything, and working with the city as well to come up with all the technicalities of it and what would be acceptable, and using the MCP really as the guiding documentation for this. So next slide. So the comprehensive sign program is basically, consistent with the signage requirements and provisions of the MCP, as I said. It's a signage district that's specific to the Related Santa Clara development. And the idea is to provide a site-wide design criteria that encourages a clean and modern and certainly appropriate signage, with the emphasis of placemaking, something to really enrich the environment and make it a real destination. This is actually a picture from the documentation to the left here. Next slide, please. The sign types that Rena had discussed and we've detailed in the CSP, we haven't designed them yet. But what we have done is we've come up with precedent signage, and I'm sure everybody's interested to know, well, when you're talking gateway, is this going to be a big crazy thing? How does that work? What are district monuments? Billboards, how's that going to work? Well, we're going to go through some gateway examples along with district monuments and tenant monuments. Also, what kind of billboards we're looking at on Tasman. Architecturally integrated signs and what that means. And we'll show some window signs, wall signs, rooftop high and parapet signs, and certainly some retail examples of what we would be looking for as precedent signage. And wayfinding, we have site-wide wayfinding and placemaking, and how is someone going to experience the environment, and how is signage and graphics going to help this district. And then at the very end, we'll talk quickly about temporary and event signage and show some examples there. Next slide, please. So overall, we're looking at this as a very special development, and there are pretty specific entry points in this development. And we want to help people understand that they're actually entering this Related Santa Clara development. And we've identified key areas where we would look for maybe gateway signage opportunities. So you can see we're looking at certainly the perimeter of the project, and we've set forth some limitations in the CSP on what these kinds of things can be. That being said, the next sheet gives you an example of what we're talking about with gateway signs. So next slide. Maybe it is this large whimsical actual gateway thing. Is it pylons and towers like we did in Salt Lake City, City Creek? Is it just a simple name of the place, such as Long Beach or World Trade Center, or is it a big digital expression that really integrates and draws someone to the entrance? Next slide, please. The district monuments would typically take off from those ceremonial gateways. So you can see up in the right-hand corner, there was a small amount of ceremonial gateways, maybe 4, maybe 5, but as we get into the development, we'll have smaller opportunities for other district monuments and other district gateways. There's more of a walking entertainment area towards the center of the district, and maybe it's an opportunity for some follies, like a big lamp in front of a furniture store or something like that. It's really about not just putting a big sign on the doorstep, but how do we mark the entrance to some of these special properties that are going through here. Some of these may even be digital. Up in the left-hand corner is that Northeastern University. Tells the story of the man who created and developed the connection to LCD technology. What better way to do that than actually on some LCD screens within the archway itself? So we'll see opportunities that are appropriate for digital signage within these monuments and gateways. Next slide, please. So tenants will also have their opportunity for monuments too, and they'll take the form of either just the name of the hotel as part of the landscape, just as this project is in Hotel Nia. Wilshire Grand Center it's a giant building, but it does have a monument sign down at the bottom. It could also be integrated wall features, and certainly will carry their brand so that their brand is available and visible from the street as well. Next slide, please. So these billboards, we have 4 of them that we've looked at. We're not 100% clear yet on what the design of that is, and if they're going to be integrated within the building themselves, whether they're going to be pylons, whether it's going to be an artful piece, such as the Zaha Hadid piece in London in the lower left-hand corner there. You know, the West Hollywood is in the upper right corner is starting to put in this pretty impactful digital sign piece. What is going to happen on Tasman is going to be appropriate for the space itself, and we've set up plenty of limitations here for size, height, but we want you to know that this is going to be a very exciting, dynamic approach into the property itself. This is also, I think it should be pointed out, the only place where offsite, as we talked about, offsite advertising will be visible outside of the district itself. All other offsite advertising cannot be visible from outside the district, and we can talk more about that later if that comes up. Next slide, please. Architecturally integrated signs, something that works well with the building. We're not just going to put a big box that is just a bunch of ads. We really want to see this become a part of the fabric of this building itself. We also do this later on, and we'll show you some super graphic ideas for this too. But the idea is that if this is digital and dynamic as well, it's controllable, and the content can be a little bit more enriching as well. Next slide, please. And then the retail folks will be able to integrate their signs, and we want to give them the freedom to express their brand on their facades as well. And sometimes it's as simple as a blade sign, like on Coach. It could be part of their parking identities. It could be a small rooftop sign over here. It could be integrated in their doorway, or just be a simple graphic that just really tells the story of their brand as you enter. And as you can see in the upper right-hand corner, the key map is starting to describe, again, this starts to happen a little bit closer to the center, closer to the middle, and scattered around this actual parcel. Next slide, please. And then project wayfinding and site-wide. Project wayfinding, this is the site-wide look at it. And this should answer some of your questions, Commissioner Becker, that we do intend to have digital dynamic parking directional signage. This in the top right corner, we just finished a project here in Santa Monica that has added these signs, these very signs, to dynamically tell people which parking garages are available and how many spaces are in them, and not just at the garage itself, but nearing that district, nearing those streets where those parking garages are on. We certainly plan to have a branded wayfinding system. I do believe you had also mentioned, let's see, Commissioner Cherukuru, she had mentioned, you know, map signage that is oriented for not just people with disabilities or accessibility issues, but the map itself needs to make some sense. And, you know, we've got a lot of experience in this, and Related does too. Heads up maps. So if you're looking at the map, if it's straight up, it's straight ahead. If it's to the right, it's to the right. We plan to do this dynamically with digital screens as well as static, wherever possible. And I also think, starting to define how far it is to walk to places, I think that's an important element. But again, we're just not there yet. We're, as Rena said, we're creating the sandbox. This is the canvas that we're building, and we're putting some limitations on ourselves. Next slide, please.
Excuse me, Andy?
Yes, sir.
This is Kevin Ryan speaking. I just want to add a couple of points there. I'm Kevin Ryan, pleased to be joining the meeting tonight. I'm the executive that works with Related, that is overseeing the overall city center development. I just want to add, if we could go back a slide to the previous wayfinding, I just want to add a couple of comments. Rena, could you go back to?
We're working on that.
Yeah. Okay, so there was a specific question about VMS, which is a vehicle management system, which we will definitely will have within the project. And I think it's mentioned, it really will start outside the garage facilities, and you can be directed in a number of ways, and it would lead to directing you to garages where there are spaces available and other ones that are full. As you get closer, it will direct you to different levels and then to individual spaces. That will be done through digital screens, are part of it, part of the vehicular wayfinding system, which would probably use both static symbols, which I think you can see some examples on this slide in terms of traditional graphic icons, as well as potentially digital items as well. So we understand that parking and getting in and out of projects is very important part of the customer experience, and we'll be very focused on that. The lower right image is actually Hudson Yards. It's a wayfinding totem that includes both digital screens for various purposes, but it's a touch screen. And there's an interesting question about sort of the universal ability. It's going to be a combination of using a lot of graphic symbols that are sort of universally understood to use to direct you to certain things. I think several were mentioned, whether it's restrooms or elevators or parking, other types of facilities. And those will show up on static signs. They will also show up on digital maps, but digital also gives you the opportunity to have wayfinding in virtually any language that you want. And even at Hudson Yards, you can export that. If you put in you use a touch screen to find your way to a particular location, it can be exported to your phone. So our company is already using that type of technology. And a lot of it is actually moving to voice activated as well. So we're very much on top of, and will be on top of, having sort of excellent wayfinding systems that are useful for all people of different languages and also handicapped and otherwise.
If I can just interrupt for a second. We allot 10 minutes for the applicant presentation. I just wanted, I think it's hard when people are remoting in to see the actual clock countdown. So we've reached that. Chair Saleme, will you be able to give the applicants permission to finish their presentation? I think they have a few more minutes.
Yeah, I think so, because right now I only see one attendee other than those here. I'd love to hear the full presentation. Thank you.
Oh, I sure appreciate that. We only have 4 more slides to go. and I think we're going to hit almost all the questions that actually popped up. So thank you, Kevin. I didn't mean to glaze over Commissioner Cherukuru's comment about ADA and such. It is second nature for us to be using international symbols. We work a lot with metro systems as well. So we're dealing with civil liberties issues. We want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to understand our signage. Europe has done a great job of sort of setting the pace for that, but certainly all the transportation centers that we've worked on has really trained us to think about the ADA and civil liberties issues with signage. So international symbols, whimsical symbols, memorable symbols, simple words, simple language, and if there is the need for other languages, we'll include that as well. I think also the project wayfinding and site-wide versions of project wayfinding is about sort of creating a common thread as well of design throughout the system. So we're not looking at creating signs that have this angled top, but it does give you a sense of that's part of that thread that we would be looking into considering as the design evolves. So on the next slide, it's not all just digital and wow and craziness. It's also about just making you comfortable in the environment and making you think and you know, concept over technology, quite honestly. So I think we're also going to be looking at how do we impact the environment with information and unexpected, memorable experiences. You know, we're really building a place here, not just a signage district. It's a place. It's a place where people want to go, and we always look for those kinds of opportunities. Next slide, please. So super graphics, I think, have kind of got a bad rap around the world because I think ad agencies have taken advantage of it in the wrong way. I think some good examples to look at are how we've handled super graphics on buildings in districts that allow it, with not just integrated custom super graphics to that building. So that top image is an Apple campaign. You know, how does it interact with the building? It's not just a movie poster like down on the right stuff side. How can we use art to wrap this super graphic and tell the story of a brand without it just being this thing? And also projections. Can we do projections that are digital projections that are, again, controllable, but take advantage of a building's architecture and really enhance it, not just be this big blaring ad? So on the next slide, again, we have some ideas of temporary and event signage. You know, they're meant to be a little bit more temporary, but you know, these events have gotten very sophisticated, and there's a lot of money spent and a lot of money earned at these events. And digital projections is a wonderful way of temporarily advertising what's going on at the event, as well as some of the structural pieces that actually come out. And most of those times they're signage, creating this whimsical experience as you enter the event. And so we've outlined some restrictions for that, as well as timelines, as Rena had called out. But just to give you a sense that this is not just, it's never going to be just schlocky stuff that's out here. It's going to be have quality. It's going to be sophisticated as best as we can control it. Next slide, please. And then freestanding and digital signs for advertising. This is, again, an opportunity for the pedestrian, for people to experience the space once they get into the site with advertising. And it's not just about making a buck here. A lot of it is about staying connected with the culture and staying connected with the space that you're in. And believe it or not, this is something that, going back to LA Metro has used as a way to make people feel less isolated when they're standing on a platform waiting for their train. If there's advertising there, there's a certain amount of being a part of something and being a part of something else and not being dismissed, if you will.
Andy, this is Kevin again. I just want to add a couple of points on this quickly, because everybody has a tendency to think of digital signs, digital screens as being advertising, but obviously the content is purely what you put on the screen and how you divide your screen time up across many different uses. So advertising is certainly one. There's also will be used by sponsors. There's different types of sponsors. There's long-term sponsors that have larger relationships, but there also are sponsors that may be specific to an individual event, like a wine festival. So sponsors use screen time. It's also used a lot to inform people about activities, both upcoming activities and events, as well as ones that might be happening real time. And you can be, and there's a wayfinding component to the digital screens. There's many ways with screen technology through touch and voice where customer engagement is really kind of a developing activity, where you interface from gaining information, or if you're a resident making payments of things. There's a lot of ways that screens are becoming interactive. And then there's also creative content that is just fun and interesting to watch. So that a lot of people are finding that screens I mean, the research is telling you that screens are more typically going to be watched if you intermix creative and artistic content with other activities. So I guess the main point is you know, there are a lot of things that can happen on these screens. And it's partly advertising, but it's also many other things that keep the center relevant and interesting if it's done properly and tastefully, which you know, we're very confident we'll focus a lot of time on that.
Okay, so was that the last slide? Because we do have hands going up now.
That is the last slide, but I do want to make sure I address Commissioner Jain's question about light and light leaks and glare and pollution. You know, light leaks is all about quality. We want to make sure that we're controlling quality and such, and that we're not just putting, you know, the developer's not putting boxes out there and such. The MCP does address lighting scenarios and lighting restrictions, and we've followed all of that. I also think it's important. There was one comment that had come through the email in the last week or so about bird strikes, for example. Some of these larger digital displays on Tasman might potentially attract, you know, birds, for example. And how does that get mitigated? And with our experience, it hasn't been a problem. That being said, these devices are LED devices, and they actually inherently have a baffle in them at the top to prevent sun from directly hitting the LED itself and making the display more efficient and more contrasty. But it also prevents that light from going straight up, because it's just inherently protecting it from the sun. That means you're not going to be able to see it from above. Ideally, that would also protect the poor birds as they potentially see this as a window or a sky or something like that, because I just don't think they're gonna see it from flying above. I think that's it for me.
And it told me I was talking to mute. So now we have Commissioner Cherukuru question, followed by Commissioner Biagini.
Thank you, Chair, again. Thank you, Andy, and thank you, Kevin. As I said, signage is pretty close to my heart. So I have three comments. One, I did see the gateway, and here is where I was going to say, you know, try to think a little more placemaking when it comes to this. You know, the signs that I recollect, and you know, I'm sure the world, whoever goes, Amsterdam, in New York, where you have the signs, hope, faith, love. You know, they're all draws that, you know, people come and say, okay, I did this. So leading in signs. But I also look to the Dubai building, which has the ability to celebrate through digital, you know, signage. It's the, you know, the King's birthday, Independence Day, Veterans Day, Memorial Day. It has the ability to digitally become an icon. But I'm not too fond of your digital signs that you showed in the images, only because it tends to have a zombie effect as well. So kids, you know, you are in digital world, you go out and again, you're bombarded with all these graphics that are constantly changing. You know, if you could tone that down to something that is inherently in biophilic, you have more of a green space that is, you know, intended really, if you have a digital, to serve as a wayfinding, not to become too much of a distraction, because it's a constant bombardment. We are in this digital bombardment. I mean, I haven't gotten off this laptop mode, and yet when I go outside, I don't want to again be bombarded by the same LED, the backlit blue lights. So I would highly suggest toning down on that digital and building more stable, long-term, you know, iconic signage that become our city, that talk to our city, a brand, and says, okay, this is related, this is Santa Clara. I mean, Santa Clara comes first, related second, but whatever conveys that as gateway would be great. Whatever conveys the celebration possibility, you know, in the future, and if you've watched any of the Chinese documentaries, you will know that within buildings, you're now able to place orders outside the building, and that's done digitally. I mean, I work with banks. I have digital signage outside a bank. face recognition is going to become more common. All of these are things that are happening across the globe that we need to at least be prepared for. Sometime it's coming. So these are three things that I would suggest for your consideration. In addition to all my previous, I would put the sandbox inwards, that universal be there, multilingual be there, and then tactile and all-inclusive signs be included. But from a design standpoint, biophilic design, having the potential to brand the city with more built gateway style environment or monuments, however you want to, primary monument, secondary monument, and then to have less of digital overload on the people in that community and in visiting. So those are my three. And also, if it is possible to make each of these signs that are, standalone signs with light that either are solar capable. So when we have a power outage, you still have the solar power kicking in. And I'm sure that's normal these days, but LED just doesn't. All of these signs, I can see a huge draw on our electrical, capacities. So just being mindful of our use of resources. Thank you, Chair. That was a lot. I yield. But if you want to respond, Andy or Kevin.
As a designer, I couldn't agree more. I think, though, one of the things that is real advantageous about digital signage is that it is controllable, and we can dim it and upgrade it, and we're not shining lights at it. So couldn't agree more. Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Are you on mute, Lance?
Yes, I was again. I have local interruptions. I think it was Commissioner Jain and then Commissioner Kezi.
Oh, I thought it was.
It was actually Biagini next.
Oh, Biagini. Sorry to skip you.
Okay. First, I want to thank Andy and Kevin for your presentation. That was very helpful. There were some key things that really were attractive to me, and those were your comments about no schlocky, about cultural connections, about the concern for light pollution and bird strikes. I want to frame my comments that I have a deep concern, and it tags with Commissioner Cherukuru, about incorporating art. I'm going to go one step further in how you do it. Can you go back to your graphic on the gateways, that particular slide, the gateway signage? Because it's going to be easier for me to describe what I'm talking about by referring to that particular slide.
We're getting it up, Commissioner Biagini.
And the reason I wanted to talk about that is when we talk about a gateway slide, I'm looking at what you present. Okay, there we are. Back up. There we go. All right. So when I look at the one on the top left, I think like St. Louis, right? I mean, their arch. Wouldn't that be a nice connection? When I look at the one to the right of it, City Creek, what comes to my mind is what makes Santa Clara, Santa Clara. And I would envision something that perhaps incorporated one of our mission bells that used to line up and down El Camino, right? That something like that says Santa Clara in a way that maybe other places don't, and it's kind of unique to Santa Clara. It's incorporating that kind of art that connects to the city in a way that Santa Clara is a bit unique. So I offer that comment. Then if we could go to the wayfinding slide, which is a couple slides after that. There we go. I did have a concern, and I definitely appreciate the icons on there because I too have traveled in Europe, and that makes life a whole lot easier when you have icons as opposed to language issues. But the concern over what I consider a rapidly emerging new world issue, and that's over electric outlets for bicycles and cars, whether that could be incorporated into some of the wayfinding issues. When I think wayfinding and I'm thinking in terms of electrical vehicles and electrical bicycles, it seems to me that your top left picture, that's great if you're walking, not so great if you're driving or maybe riding a bicycle, where some of the others could incorporate that. And I don't know if that's something you had thought of, right?
Yeah, this is Kevin Ryan. Absolutely, we will be directing, and I think there are easy, probably becoming international standards for electric outlets for electric cars. Definitely, we will steer people to through our wayfinding systems.
Terrific. And then my final comment would be on the issue of super graphics. I do share a concern about, I get bombarded with computer images in these days of Zooms, maybe a little more than what I appreciate. But what I also wanted to comment on is when I look at something like this, I look at the right stuff and I say to myself, no, I'd rather see the focus on art. And the best way I can explain that is to say a picture can tell 1,000 words in 1,000 languages, where if you have something like the right stuff, you are limited with language. And I'd rather not limit us to language, which tags based to what Commissioner Cherukuru was saying, icons, or again, art where a picture tells 1,000 words instead of using 1,000 words, which is, I think, what advertisers sometimes get stuck on and what annoys people. And then my final comment would be, I don't know if this is workable or not, but I'm going to throw it out for what it's worth. We do have art departments in some of our community college, mission college, for example, Santa Clara University and the rest. And if there was a way somehow in incorporating a local artist rendition of something that maybe it becomes into a super graphic where it's, not something that's permanent. But if there's some way of involving the community, and I say that because as soon as somebody knows their art is on that B box on the corner around where they decorate, everybody wants to go see their family members' art or their neighbors' art or the rest. And so that's another way of bringing the community into it, into art. And associated with that was I did like that idea. It wasn't on this slide. I don't remember which one it was, where you talked about, it looked like a square box that people walk through with the LEDs on the inside. And on the outside, it was the story of the guy who actually came up with that. That to me is a great way of integrating art, not just a box, okay? And integrating a bit of a story uniquely to Santa Clara. How that applies, I'm not sure at this point, but I wanted to throw that out for a comment. And again, I apologize. I know that was a lot to say, but there you have my comments, and I appreciate your presentation, and I hope my comments are helpful.
Yes, it was very good. Thank you. Commissioner Jain?
Yeah, I don't know if there's any way to pull up Exhibit 03D, like dog, from the CSP. But along Avenue C, I see there's a huge line, covers 3 blocks of digital art / landmark. I wanted to understand what that is. That's on Exhibit 03D. And I guess while we're looking that up, I wanted to go back and understand the light pollution just a little bit better. I understand light leaks from sort of internally lit signs can be avoided easily by a better quality thing. I wanted to understand what a hotspot is.
For this report
And
for this planning.
then I wanted to know if any of the uplighting or the sign illumination, external sign illumination lighting, has full cutoff screens or barriers to prevent light spilling over.
Yeah, I can answer that. So for the hotspots, it's probably a little bit too technical for this, but again, it speaks to the quality. in that if there was going to be a light on the surface, or if it was going to be internally illuminated, that it wasn't going to show a bunch of LED hotspots behind the graphic itself. It's going to be evenly lit, evenly illuminated. Again, it goes to defining quality of a sign. It's something we do in our specifications every day here. So again, it's probably something more appropriate for a performance specifications document. But again, we're really trying to define quality for these signs here. And for
Exhibit 03D, did anyone find that?
We're looking right now, Commissioner Jain.
Okay.
Page 19.
Yeah, page 19. And then I just wanted to return to the issue of billboards. I think that this place is going to be a huge draw, not only from within Santa Clara, but regionally. And it would be nice for the city to do some of its own. It's hard to get messages to our community, to our people in our city, and to be able to have 5 or 10% of the time, up to 5 or 10% of the time, available for PSAs and city notices would be a very nice benefit. I know we've gotten commitments for other billboards in the city for that, electronic billboards. So that just is something that is very interesting to me. But let's go back to Exhibit 03D here. Oh, it's not quite up yet. I don't know.
Well, and in regards to the controlling the light, if you will, with baffles and such, that is actually stated within the CSP that every effort should be made to control the exposure of that light to just the sign element itself.
Okay. Yeah, it said that, I think when I read it, it said that illuminating other things, but it didn't specifically say spilling out into the, into the air up above.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, I see you have 03D. So that big blue line, the vertical line along Avenue C, what do you intend for there?
Well, I think at that point, that's backing up the backsides of largely parking garages, public parking garages here. And it's not necessarily visible from Lafayette, just sort of the top part of it's visible from Lafayette. And we were thinking that this might be an opportunity for a digital mesh that might create like an ambiance, something scintillating, if you will. And since it's not quite yet defined, and we know we can't have advertising necessarily on this side, we are looking for something to conceal and activate. I shouldn't say activate, but conceal the fact that it's just a big parking garage, but also see it as an opportunity to create a nice lighting feature. And so that's why we call it the digital art landmark thing. So people can orientate themselves, to this road in and of itself.
I see, because the comment 2 here says digital art and landmarks to contain artful content and lighting expressions to enhance the experience of entering City Place. But I don't really see this as an entry point.
Yeah, Andy, let me supplement what you just said. There's at least one and possibly two, not going to be three, larger garages in our plan right there. And the general thought is there are car park entries along that Avenue C that feed into the garages. So it is an arrival point from a person coming by car into a garage. And so I don't want to overplay this item because it's really just a thought that we could do something with lighting to sort of enhance the entry experience, and it would not be continuous. I think this diagram is maybe a little misleading. It looks like there used to be a continuous element, so it could be within that zone. think is a better way to describe it. Correct, Andy?
Yeah, that's correct. I think, again, it looks so much more bold on the screen here than I think it was intended to be. When people enter from this side of the property through Lafayette, they take those little hook roads off to the right there. So it's really a good way to bring people back into this very engaging property. It's barely visible from Lafayette, but it'll create a little bit of a glow on that side. So it'll help define it. But to Kevin's point, it hasn't been evolved yet. I think we're just looking at what are we going to do with these parking structures.
Well, I'm very much in favor of dressing up parking structures because we do have a bunch of ugly ones in the city.
Yeah, same here.
Okay, that's what I had. Thank you. I don't know if you want to address the billboards.
Is Commissioner Jain, can you hear me by any chance?
Yes, I can. Yep.
Yes, hi, Commissioners, Mr. Chair, I appreciate the opportunity to respond on that particular issue. We have engaged in some dialogue with city staff about that, and we intend to engage in some additional conversations about that matter, and expect to come back with a specific set of ideas to address your points on the use, potential incorporation of PSA on the billboards along Tasman. So we'll work with the staff on that and come back with something specific when we come back to council.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Okay, Commissioner Kesey.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to second Commissioner Jain's question about, well, the request to incorporate public service messages, because we already have a significant divide, perhaps, between the northern and southern part of the parts of the city. This development is going to be a huge development on its own, and I really hate to see it become isolated from the rest of the city, and the people who work there and live there to not feel like being a part of a larger community. So I think those messages will be very important to inform them of events that are going on in the city and to engage them in our civic process. So I really hope to see a good deal of public service messages incorporated into those signs. My second question is, I really appreciate how my fellow commissioners spoke about what those signages mean. It's not just something you read and something, it has a lot of significance for people who are going to use this development. But also signage is supposed to be, well, I think there's a lot of artistic aspects to signage, and I'm guessing that Related is thinking about how these signs will be an integral part of the overall visual appeal of the community, and how it might be, how other aesthetics such as public art might be incorporated. So I'd like to ask what type of public arts are being planned for these parcels. Thank you.
Commissioner, this is Steve Eimer. If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to briefly respond to the question about public art. Would that be all right?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You know, the CSP that we've been working on for a very long time here with staff is not really meant to address public art within the project. But public art is going to be a very important part of the project in many different respects. And we will be, as we get further down the line in our design efforts, we will be developing and incorporating some very specific plans for public art. That will be included in all of the various public plazas that we're incorporating throughout the project. I think when we presented the DAP1 and DAP2 plans, I think we spoke fairly broadly about the scale and scope of the public areas, public plazas that will be incorporated. Also, the public parks that we'll be incorporating will also benefit from public art as well. And we typically, with our significant projects that we've developed in other locations, we've also incorporated a great deal of public art, even within the specific buildings in numerous cases, that is available for the public to view and participate in. So it's not really referenced in this particular program because this is really focused on signage, but we will definitely, public art will be a very important part of this project.
Thank you very much. And yes, I understand that, our discussion is not about art today. I raised this issue because it's part of the aesthetics. I noticed in the presentation that there was a sign created by Zaha Hadid, a very famous artist, an architect. But I'm wondering if Related can think about incorporating works by local artists as well as world famous artists. Because again, I really like to see this project become part of the larger community and not just a freestanding big office shopping complex on its own.
Yes, that's a really excellent point. And that working with the local arts community, not only for works of art, but also to feature artists through programming of art shows and art exhibits that will feature local art. It will also be an important part of what we do here. We do that in all of our projects, and in the plazas and in other settings. And we'll have regular art shows and art exhibits in addition to working with local artists to develop and feature their work.
Thank you very much. I look forward to learning more about this then.
Great.
Okay, so I guess I'm last. I just wanted to echo my hopes for aesthetically interesting parking structures and other large facades, because in Santa Clara we've had a number of projects come through with stacked pizza boxes and concrete block houses. We're trying to get away from that, and I think your signage solution is exceptionally well thought out. Signage in itself could also act as a mechanism to break up large volumes and spaces. So I'm hoping that will be pursued as part of the process. Even the idea of public art was great, because that could, if you do digital signage, you could, in theory, rotate through approved public art examples as an intermediate between other screen data that you may be presenting. Finally, in the tracking of available parking, I'm hoping you'll also be tracking available charging, because I think that's one of the things that as we move to more EV transport in our city, people will be looking to see if they can charge while they're parked, and that'll give them a little help to know that they have a slot open. That's all really comments. There's no real questions. I'm just hoping that we'll get some of that stuff tracked in the final solution. Okay. Thank you. Are there other questions? Anyone else have any other follow-ups?
Are there public comments on this, Chair?
I was waiting to have Elizabeth remind me. I didn't see any attendees at this point at all, so I didn't know if there was anybody actually physically there.
No, there's no one here in the council chambers, and no comments have been submitted via e-comment.
Okay, so now I see Commissioner Jain and Commissioner Becker, and I can anticipate them. Go ahead, Commissioner Jain.
Motion to close public hearing.
I don't think we even need to do that if there is no public. I think we went through that with Alex last time.
In this case, please humor me and go through the formality.
Okay, sounds like a plan. I have a motion and a second to close public hearing.
And the motion was made by Commissioner Jain?
Commissioner Jain.
Thank you. Seconded by Commissioner Biagini. Thank you.
And I see Commissioner Becker has his hand up. Is there anything you needed to get in before we act on the motion?
No, I'm waiting until after the motion to speak.
Oh, okay. Well, it's in progress for this part. Then we can move on to the next piece.
The motion is to close public hearing. Commissioner Akazi?
Yes.
Commissioner Jain?
Yes.
Chair Saleme?
Yes.
Commissioner Becker?
Yes.
Commissioner Biagini?
Yes.
Commissioner Cherukuru?
Yes.
Commissioner Hero?
Take yourself off mute.
Commissioner Harrell, you are still muted.
So Commissioner Hero, you just need to unmute.
You might be technically gone.
Here we go.
There you go.
And your vote, Commissioner Hero?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion
so
passes. Thank you.
Public hearing is closed. Now we can move on to the next conversation or motion.
I can make a motion if there's no deliberation.
I see Commissioner Jain and Commissioner Becker
Oh.
hands up, so I'll let them go first.
Okay.
Commissioner Becker was first, actually. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. So I have to say, you've actually impressed me with what you have in front of us right now. I mean, the project, I wasn't really impressed with the project before. I mean, I know you've come before us before when we talked about, it's just boxes, but seeing some of the TLC you put into your project, I commend you on that. And I see the public art that you've been implementing in it. And I think that's great. I mean, I'd like to see it a lot more. Like you had one of them, which was there. I thought it was a Frida Kahlo painting, but it wasn't. But it's, I like to see more of that intercultural art. I like it to be user friendly, so people are very, any age can figure out how to get to locations. All of our other commissioners really brought up a lot of my major points that I wanted to discuss, but I think you guys covered a lot of the bases for me, which I really thank you guys for discussing these issues. And basically I got to sit back and hear my own thoughts. But we're going to have like Super Bowls probably here in the future. We're going to have some kind of events here around this area. And by seeing some of what you guys are planning to implement and put together, it's eye-catching. And I'm glad that you guys are putting that emphasis on it, because I didn't see that when we were in the original phases of these projects when we were talking about. And now knowing that the signage, what you guys are putting forward, I'm really kind of proud that you guys have impressed me and blown away my expectations. And I really want to see this area succeed. And I just really think that, like what Commissioner Jain was saying, parking is a major issue, especially in this area. It needs, I think maybe an app. That's something that everyone's been talking about to me, especially in San Francisco, about having an app to find your parking spots, that maybe you could have signage that you can have people to link to that so they can find the parking. But at the same time, going back to user friendly, that is, I think, key to this whole thing. And I think you guys have provided the proper signage, and I think we're going to continue on this process of working out the kinks of it. But I give you guys a lot of kudos for really impressing me and changing my perspective on this and seeing this in a different light. And I really wish you guys the best success on this.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Jain.
Yeah, I like some of the energy that you're bringing for the dynamic programming and a lot of LED screens and so on. I would like to make a motion if the chair will allow me to.
I believe we're at that point. You can make a motion on the item.
I'll second, Anthony.
Oh, yeah, I have to make it first.
Oh, sorry.
I would like to recommend to the City Council to approve a comprehensive signage program for parcels 4 and 5 of the related Santa Clara project, located at 5155 Stars and Stripes, with the additional recommendation that the council consider asking for or requiring, I'm not sure, up to 10% per hour of the screen time on the 4 billboards on Tasman to play PSA, public service announcements, from the city or nonprofits within the city.
A second.
Through the chair, can I add a friendly amendment?
Yes, certainly.
Commissioner Jain, if you're amicable to emphasize that the signage be universal with multilingual and all-inclusive needs met, and biophilic and solar resources being considered as part of the energy usage as well.
I don't know if that, to make it multilingual, how many languages will we incorporate?
Yeah.
And I think it opens up too many options, or it makes it holds back the process. Do you have another way to word that? I certainly agree with the universal symbols, which I think they're going to provide anyway.
Or consider language access. We do have other regions in the area that have incorporated multilingual directories for the 4 top languages. The city can incorporate the highest diverse population languages as part of its recommendations, up to 3, as a suggested for static directories. But the digital be accessible at least in the top 3 languages. The registrar of voters has to do it in top 5 languages, if you know it already. They are mandated by law. We are just lagging behind in making it accessible to our diverse community and limiting it. And if we continue to, we will not achieve the true diverse, all-inclusive nature that our city actually holds right now. So,
I would be fine making adding a recommendation recommendation that the council consider adding more multilingual support to the digital signage.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not a requirement, but it's a recommendation. I think, yeah, because the cost or the consideration of how to force multilingual is going to be contextual. So I don't know if staff and the developer are prepared to commit 100% to multilingual in all cases.
Mr. Chair, for clarification, was Commissioner Cherukuru referring to all digital signs or specifically wayfinding signs?
Wayfinding,
Yeah.
only making sure there's appropriate, adequate access, all inclusivity. And mostly, I'm not saying advertising should be in all languages, Coach can only be said as Coach. It's already a brand. So I'm not saying that for retail signs, but where it's directing, where it's wayfinding, and where it's intended for access, and then to encourage multilingual access and all-inclusive access.
I would be fine with the signage. The other stuff, I think, is too constrictive for the applicant.
Would we want to confirm with the applicant if it's?
Sure. If you, you're welcome to have a discussion with them.
Andy or anyone from the team?
Commissioner, this is Steve Eimer.
Hi, Steve.
Be happy to try to address your points as best I can. If you could maybe do it one at a time for me, that would help.
Sure, Steve. Thank you so much. You get my broad interest and my goal. All I'm saying is that it's incorporated already in, and I do it. I have it done. I've done it. So just making sure that it's, universally accessible, the icons, so you incorporate universal symbology. Numeric, of course, is already in your document to see if there's opportunities for multilingual up to 3 languages where it's digital and where it's actually leading to sign directions and accessibility. And the last was that you have solar and biophilic design as part of your consideration for where you're as part of your design guidelines. That's simple enough.
Yeah, excuse me. I think as it relates to the wayfinding signage components, what I would like to propose is that we take that, those statements and take the opportunity between now and when we do come back to City Council to refine that a little bit, if we can, from a more of a technical standpoint, to make sure we aren't committing to do something that we, just can't quite succeed in. So if we could take in a sense, the spirit of what you're suggesting, and then respond specifically to it before we, when we do come back to council, we'd be happy to do that.
Thank you, Steve. So that's basically the intent of the motion as well, Commissioner Suds, that we recommend the City Council work with the applicant in meeting the guidelines that I just talked about.
I accept that amendment.
Thank you.
And I accept it too as a second.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Xander, is there any legal implications of making those amendment suggestions? Are we pressuring the applicant into a position where it's financially or logically impossible to complete it?
Well, these are recommendations that are being made.
All right.
We do impose the condition on public service announcements when there's billboard relocations, so it's not unprecedented. But I think, as Mr. Eimer indicated, he needs to have an opportunity to work with city staff in the next few weeks to figure out the nuances of what sort of public service announcements would be viable. I don't see an immediate legal problem with either of these recommendations. I think they're fine to push forward to the council as is, and the staff and the applicant will work on some of the nuances in the meantime.
Well, I certainly support the intent, as long as it is not creating an impossible situation. So, thank you. So we have a motion and a second, and friendly amendments. Is there any other comment or friendly amendment addition? No. Okay, I guess we can move to a vote.
Yeah, I need one last bit of clarification, Mr. Chair. I believe the original motion stated by Commissioner Jain, was it to adopt a resolution making that recommendation? I didn't hear the word resolution, but I might have missed it.
Yes, to adopt a resolution to make the recommendation. Yes.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
Commissioner
I didn't hear it either. Thank
Cherukuru,
you.
Commissioner Cherukuru, on your friendly amendment, the ending of your your amendment was to include solar. Could you complete what you said, to include solar as part of the design guidelines? Did I get that correct?
Yeah, correct. To use solar power as an energy resource in lieu of just LED and backlit lighting. That was my intent, but I'll let the staff determine the actual technical aspects of it, but to consider other energy resources.
Okay, thank you.
Elizabeth, did you get the full recommendation? It was a bit tricky to follow, so I just want to make sure with the friendly amendment.
So we're approving alternative number 1, which is on the staff report, to adopt the resolution. There's a friend and that council consider requesting up to 10% per hour on billboards for PSA, basically. And the friendly amendment to request the developer to work with city staff so that wayfinding signage includes universal symbols up to 3 languages, with council considering multilingual and all-inclusive, and to include solar as part of design guidelines. So I think basically that is what we are talking about for the amendment. I mean, for the motion.
Biophilic design as well. More green landscape than hard-built surfaces. So that's why I said biophilic. Thank you.
Commissioner Cherukuru, sorry, just as the staff that's going to try and implement that. I don't, can you explain to me the connection between biophilic and signage? I'm not familiar with it.
I saw too many hard, LED signs, but with buildings and with the designs that showed were rock solid, I'm just saying incorporate more landscaping to break that solid mass. So it didn't appear that was in the images shown. But the goal is to incorporate more landscape green spaces along with the signage. If you're putting up a standalone sign, see if it can be in a pot, in a flower pot, or in a landscape, design.
Yeah, no, I understand your intent. I'm just kind of trying to put it within what we're doing with signage, recognizing that landscape is really part of a different kind of approval process. I don't know if any of the attorneys on the call have a suggestion, if we're mixing things together that are okay to go together, or if it'll create implementation problems in the future.
Well, at this point, it's a recommendation to work with the applicant to include biophilic design. Why don't we figure out the viability and the nuances of that over the next couple of weeks? I don't think we need to pull it apart too much tonight.
Yeah, from our perspective, I think that's the right suggestion, Xander, because both on the commissioner's goal to incorporate solar and biophilic design, we're certainly not opposed to that. But again, it's getting to the details of how you implement that and how you represent that and how you sort of regulate that. And I think we'll have to work on it and come back with some more specifics to council.
I think that's fair. I think what I'm hearing is that the intent is to try and have a more green experience for the signage areas. I know you're going to probably want to work with staff to see if that's feasible. I also know there's limitations like pulling irrigation lines and other things that could be really difficult. So I think you guys are all in the same mindset to try and make this as nice and appealing a project as possible.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks, and thanks, Xander, and thanks, Steve. I think we all get the intent, and this is a fabulous project. So all of my recommendations are to see that this becomes an iconic place for the city. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. And I really do want to say I appreciate all the positive comments that we've heard tonight. We are, I think, as you know, we're working very closely with your staff. We've spent probably close to 2 years working with them on this CSP, and they've been terrific. We're looking forward to getting into the implementation stage of everything we're doing here. So we appreciate all your positive comments. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think I wanted to add too that as it's as much an encouragement as a challenge, because I'm hoping that this project will actually be used as a representative example of best practices for signage. So in the future, when other projects come through, we can say like this. So that's great. Thank you.
Agreed.
Do we have enough of a motion definition to be able to try and proceed?
I think we do, so let's put it on the floor. Commissioner Casey?
Aye.
Commissioner Jain?
Yes.
Chair Saleme?
Yes.
Commissioner Becker?
Yes.
Commissioner Biagini?
Yes.
Commissioner Cherukuru?
Yes.
Commissioner Hero?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes.
Thank you to all and the presenters. It's really encouraging to see this as a unanimous agreement. So, since we have completed this portion, we actually move on to the next section as far as I can see. Reports of commission, board liaison, and committee, and announcements, other items. This may well be the time that Commissioner Jain and Commissioner Becker will have an opportunity to perhaps announce something. I see Commissioner Becker's hand up.
Thank you, Chair Saleme. Okay, so to my fellow commissioners and to my fellow Santa Clarans, I have to say this has been one fun journey that I am glad to share with all of you. This was actually a dream come true, not only winning the election, but also being appointed to the significant body. I thank Mayor Gilmore, Patty Mahan, Pat Kolstad, and Teresa O'Neill for appointing me to this planning commission in 2018. My win does not change anything from how I governed here on the planning commission. I will always have an open door policy. I will always be willing to listen to any of my colleagues here. I am always one phone call away. My goal the entire time on this commission was to provide transparent oversight on the development of our city. My initiative was to be the representative of the people and an advisor to the council. I had residents as my compass and my independent voice as my strength. I will work hard for those that supported me and work harder for those that did not. I look forward to working with Mayor Gilmore, council members Hardy, Chahal, and Watanabe, as well as council-elects Jain and Park. I want to share, though, with you some of my great experiences with my fellow commissioners during my tenure. And it might encourage many others to apply and look into the Planning Commission because of these great people. First, I'm going to start with Nancy. I call her Aunt Nancy. And I'm going to reference the trip to Sacramento in 2018. That was a journey. Both of us were running for office at the time. She was running for city council. I was running for mayor. And we realized that we needed to go get an FPPC number to go open our bank accounts. Well, we were on a deadline and we were running out of time, and we barely really knew each other. We just knew who we were, basically on a piece of paper. And so we took this journey to Sacramento, and we got to know each other on this journey. We got to, Sacramento. I jumped out of the car, ran up to the Secretary of State's office to go get a spot in line before they closed so we can get our FPPC numbers before the end of the day. That is something I will always remember and cherish, Nancy, and I really always appreciate your support and always appreciate your words of wisdom, especially, when it comes down to what we went through in Sacramento. Those are good times. Those are really good times.
Never forget.
Yuki, Yuki, this year, Yuki endorsed me for my campaign, and I was actually blown away. You had faith in me. You believed in me in spite of the mess that was going on in the media with my name. You listened to me, and over the conversation we had over the summer, what you wanted in a council member, you empowered me, and you gave me the confidence. Your support was unexpected, and because of that, I'll never forget that. And I seek your guidance as when I'm on the council. Commissioner Jain, when I first ran, I actually ran against him in 2016. The stakes were just as high back then too. Little did I know he would actually become an ally. And when I first arrived on the commission, Suds took me under his wing. And so I'm really proud to say I congratulate you on your win as well. And I'm looking forward to working with you on the council, whether we agree or disagree. Chair Saleme, you're often a voice of reason. I enjoyed working with you on the Planning Commission and Architectural Review. You provided me a lot of education on design and architecture. There were several projects I am proud to have worked on with you, from the infamous Airbnb house to the parking structure on San Tomas, which is the service now, including those affordable housing projects and pushing for that affordable art, public art. But my favorite moment actually is, well, it's actually a tied moment maybe, but the favorite moment was where both you and I stood up to a developer for a data center and said the people of Santa Clara want more than a box. They want something to be proud of. And the other moment with tied was when you actually gave me a ride in your Tesla. I was impressed by that. But I will always cherish and respect your opinion. And as a council member, I would gladly look forward to your recommendations, and I will still be watching your meetings. Steve Kelly, he left us, but I got to give a shout out to Steve because he's always been supportive of encouraging of me and pushed me to do bigger things. Last year in Santa Barbara, where Steve and I attended the Planning Commission conference, he was a lifesaver. I was lucky to get that same flight back with him, as that whole trip was actually a disaster for me, as my bank account was on hold, missing the original flight to Santa Barbara, upon many other fun incidences I won't get into, but Steve was my lifesaver at the SFO airport. And I was going to have to take the train home that night. And he ended up saying, "Hey, Anthony, do you have a ride home?" I was actually a loss for words, and his girlfriend asked me to go with him, and he saved me. Priya, I look forward to your common sense approach to things. And honestly, you always are direct and transparent. I respect that, and I look forward to your input on future projects on the city council. Ricky, I've just got to know you, but I see lots of your videos on your Facebook about you feasting and your cooking talents. So I expect a lot of good recommendations of good eats. And oh, yes, of course, those projects too. But I would love to help you with some tools and to get you some of your videos out there so we can name you Chef Ricky videos. But All of you have helped me in some way or somehow. We have shared personal stories, we have broke bread, and we have all collaborated in some project. We will agree and disagree, but at the end of the day, we respected one another despite any differences. You are my colleagues, my friends, and my family. We are all Santa Clarans, and together we will make this a better city by providing prosperity for the future descendants. As for our staff, Gloria, Rena, Elizabeth, and our camera crew. First, Gloria and Elizabeth, you were both there, giving me rides in the storms when I didn't have a car when I was taking the bus. During this pandemic, you have provided all of us with these tools, the resources, but a lot of it is our meetings were not successful without our camera crew, and they deserve a lot of credit for these meetings, for the flawless and occasional hiccup, because, I think Comcast has actually more hiccups. You are the window to our audience now. You provide the communication for our residents since we cannot be in person. So voters overwhelmingly have made a statement for the direction of Santa Clara, and I can't wait to get to work. Therefore, I am announcing my resignation from the Santa Clara Planning Commission effective at noon on December 7th, 2020, one day before I am sworn in as the District 6 City Council member. I would like to make it a duty and an obligation that with the new council comes a new perspective, different than a couple months ago. I personally feel that we open up the application process and include those from the former pool of candidates. This is the democratic way, and a different perspective on council will now be different from a couple months ago. We could have applicants that may never applied and voices that we have never heard until now. To those that will replace me, this office is your canvas. Champion your values, listen to residents, and above all, be independent. Your compass is your community, and your voice is your reason. You hold the keys to the future and what the future holds for the city of Santa Clara. To my commission before I go, I won't forget you, and it was a pleasure and an honor to serve with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will miss you. I think it's been an interesting time. I'm sure everyone perhaps has a parting comment, and I'll just let you rotate through if you wish. Then we'll have Commissioner Jain. Commissioner Kesey.
Yes, congratulations, Anthony. I know that you will continue to serve our community with honor and integrity, as you always have on our planning commission. And also, I think your new job will require a lot of courage. Please remember that our community always comes first, and have a great time.
Thank you. Commissioner Cherukuru.
Thank you, ex-chair. When I joined the commission, I was very impressed at how you chaired the commission, and it set the stage for me to come as a newbie into planning commission. But you made it so comfortable, so inclusive, so accommodating, and to be at ease. You make people be at ease. You bring the true voice of your constituents, our community, and you stood up for what you believed in. And I think that stood you apart. And you truly deserve this. It was a very tough journey. I can only imagine all the hurdles that preceded this success. And you are a role model to our millennials, our youth community, our renters, our, uh, our community that just wants to know that they can do it. And I think you are a trailblazer. So thank you for being yourself and for being the voice of our city. Look forward to many more great things under your leadership. And we hope to support you as a commission and as an individual. I hope to support you in any way we can. So thank you and congratulations on being council elect.
Thank you, Commissioner Cherukuru. I was surprised that Commissioner, well, I'm going to call him Anthony now. So I'm surprised that Anthony forgot about Pomeroy. That was one of our great days. Yes, Commissioner Biagini.
Hey, nephew, can you hear me?
There you go.
You can.
Wait. God, I will never forget that ride that we took to Sacramento. Both of us kind of going nuts and getting to know each other. And all I could say, Anthony, it has been such a pleasure working with you. And you know what I said before, once you're family, you're always family. So you're stuck with Aunt Nancy. And congratulations to you. You're going to be on the council now. You'll be a fine addition. And we will still have that connection between the Planning Commission family and the council. So good luck to you. And the only thing we might disagree on is if Commissioner Hero and I ever do that lasagna cook-off, I promise not to hold it against you if you vote for his over mine, because we're family, okay?
Okay, Commissioner Harrow.
Hey, congratulations, Anthony. I know you'll do great on council, and look forward to seeing you and working with you in the future. Thank you.
Okay. So now we can have a deja vu moment with Commissioner Jain.
Yeah, first I just want to say, you know, I've worked with Anthony now on Planning Commission, on the campaign, and I'm really looking forward to working with him on council as well. I first want to thank Elizabeth, Rosa, Simrat, Gloria, Derek, Kieran, Xander, Rena, and Andrew for all your support these past 5 years. I know you've had to put up with a lot of late night meetings because I always have more questions, but you know, I think we're all in it to try to make Santa Clara better. For those of you who may have missed the banter about bad hair and lack of hair on Zoom before this meeting started, you will have missed the congeniality that we have on this Planning Commission. I'm honored to have worked with such a dedicated group of people who volunteer their time, read long packets to make Santa Clara a better place to live. You all make me very proud to be a Santa Claran. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think Commissioner Jain and I have shared a long passion for EV and better transportation in Santa Clara, so it's great to know that he'll be out on the council working hard to push that forward even faster. Okay, Commissioner Cherukuru.
Again, in different ways, Commissioner Jain, you really stand up for city sustainability goals. I see you as that. You know, you are our champion of the cause, something that is much needed in the city, and you push us beyond our boundaries. So I'm glad that you're on the leadership to make it happen. Many a time it's a fine balancing act, but you push our boundaries and you make it happen for the city. And I'm hoping that we become a stronger, sustainable, and resilient community under your leadership. So thank you again for running, and thank you for your stewardship.
Thank you.
Commissioner Biagini.
Okay, there I am on mute. Commissioner Jain, I'm going to miss you on the Planning Commission. You always, I want to echo what Commissioner Cherukuru said, you always are so conscious about bringing in what I think of as the holistic approach to what we do. The concern about the environment, the concern about the future and how the environment plays into it. You brought up questions in the past that I sit here and think, why didn't I think of that question? God, that's a really good one. So I really want to thank you two for, you know, I haven't been on the Planning Commission as long as you and Anthony, but both of you guys really kind of helped me see things and grow as a Planning Commissioner, and your family too. And I will hold it against you if you think Ricky's lasagna is better than mine either. Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
And we won't talk about that hair issue anymore. But yes, we are a congenial bunch.
I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
None whatsoever.
Hair.
Congratulations and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Kesey.
So as congratulations. I can't think of anyone who will be you're gonna make a great council member, and this is such a well-deserved win. So I hope you have a great time continuing to serve. Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you, Yuki.
Commissioner Becker again, please.
Council-elect Jain, Commissioner Jain, you have been my, a guidance for me. Like I said before, you took me under your wing. I lost my father about 6 years ago, and so you've kind of been a father figure to me. A lot of people here in Santa Clara have, and you've guided me, and you've given me the education, and you've pretty much been my, a rock for me. And it's been a pleasure working with you on this campaign, and it's going to be a pleasure working with you on the city council. I can't wait.
Certainly will be.
Okay. Commissioner Cherukuru. Careful about mute. Oh, I guess she popped off.
Sorry, that was lower hand.
Okay. Commissioner Harrow then.
Yeah, Commissioner Jain, I just want to say thank you. Your expertise in the field of planning is obvious. And at this point in my planning career, I'm all ears. Basically, I'm sitting here and I'm trying to take it all in. And it really is obvious that you know your business when it comes to planning and the entitlement process in general. And I want to say thank you for your dedication and congratulations on your new journey.
Thank you, Ricky.
I guess I hear from Rena.
Yeah, thank you. For both Commissioner Becker and Commissioner Jain. So first with Commissioner Becker, I just wanted to share how much I appreciated you chairing the Planning Commission as we started this pandemic. You did such an excellent job of organizing our meetings so that they ran efficiently and business continued, and each planning commissioner got a fair chance, a fair bite at the apple. I just, I don't know if I've ever shared that with you, maybe when you transitioned out of the role, but, I just really want to thank you for taking that role so seriously and stepping up to the plate and leading the Planning Commission during this really, tricky time. It continues to be tricky, and I know Chair Saleme's doing an excellent job as well, but really there was no guidebook for how to do this, and I really, really appreciate your leadership. And Commissioner Jain, you are a planning wonk, and I really appreciate that about you. I really value the fact that you are constantly educating yourself and educating the community on how to push this city forward and be a leader. I'm really excited to see both of you as city council members. You both have a lot of experience now on land use, and very excited to see both of you make your mark on the council.
Thank you, Rena.
Okay. I don't see any other hands, so I appreciate that we are at the next step.
Chair Salem, there is one more hand.
Oh, there is, isn't there? Gloria, sorry.
Thank you. Chair Salem, just want to make a couple comments to both our council elects. First of all, I want to congratulate both of you. It was a very hard race, and you both dealt with quite a bit. And we want to thank you for your commitment to the Planning Commission. I want to say both of you absolutely gave your heart and soul to this position. I see you're both extremely dedicated and very caring and committed to the welfare of the community, and that really comes through in your actions. So I want to congratulate both of you and thank you for your service as planning commissioners, and look forward to your leadership on the city council.
Thank you, Gloria.
May I say something as well? I don't know how to raise my hand, I'm afraid.
Well, we have Xander, and then I'll let you chime in right after that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wait your turn, Crabtree.
Absolutely. Always defer to the attorney.
Well, on that note, I want to thank Commissioners Jain and Becker for deferring to the attorney. You know, it's always a challenge to build trust with commissioners, and I feel like you have had a great relationship with the rest of the commission, but also with me. And I really appreciate the trust that you've shown me over the last several years. I'm really excited to see what you come up with as council members, because I know you're going to do some great things, and it's really not goodbye, because I know you're going to be sending work to the city attorney's office in some way, shape, or form. So I know we'll continue to work together, but I will miss working with you on this direct basis, and it has been a real pleasure. And I just want to thank you for the dedication you've shown, and for trusting me as your attorney.
Thank you, Xander.
Thank you, Xander.
Okay, it's up to Andrew.
Well, I just would be echoing a lot of what's already been said, but I also want to express my appreciation. And, you know, I recognize it's a tremendous commitment of time to be a planning commissioner. So, you know, I think that really should be recognized, how much effort you all put in. But as our two outgoing commissioners, especially we're addressing today, that, you know, we really value that as staff. You know, we're doing this as our job, and we recognize that you're doing this as volunteers, and that's something that's really important, and it shows, you know, your belief in public service and the value that you can bring to your community. So we really appreciate that as staff, and we hope that in our approach to working with you as a commission, that that comes across. And also, I would say I'm really looking forward to working with both of you on City Council, and I know you have a lot of ideas and different types of initiatives, and it'll be we're as staff looking forward to working with you on those things and seeing how that goes. So again, thank you for your service.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to have a moment? No? Oh, okay.
Motion to adjourn.
No, you're too quick. Oh. You can motion at the end. I'll give that one to you.
Are you that in a rush to go to
He wants out of here.
No, wow, I thought you liked that.
I was like, see ya, would it?
Okay, we got to do Commissioner travel and training reports and requests for training. Is there any today? I guess there's council training reports and.
I think we do have a report on training. I think nothing has been expended or spent since our last meeting, though. Gloria or Elizabeth, do you guys have that?
That's correct. It was sent out today, the budget report, and there are no new expenses. We can put it up on the screen, but each commissioner also received the report.
Yeah, there was an expenditure, I think that was in October, for $700. It says for the cable adapters, but Elizabeth, is that a previous expense that was identified?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So as you all know, the budget was reduced as a part of the cost-cutting measures, but with the $16,000 balance for the fiscal year, then your current balance with all the purchases made to date is now $14,502.30.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Biagini?
I'm a little out of order, but if you could allow me, Chair, I would like to ask my fellow commissioners if we let Suds and Anthony do our final motion and second, and after that have a group Zoom hug. That's all.
Everyone's wanting to get out of here.
Yeah. We were, I think, that was like a predestined closure. So I guess we're done with the training reports. We can do community development reports, budget updates. Was there any other budget update?
No other budget update.
Okay, upcoming agenda items?
Yeah, our next meeting in December will include at least one conditional use permit, as well as a study session on the Freedom Circle specific plan.
All right. Is that going to create a situation because we will be 2 commissioners down? I assume we'll still have a majority.
I believe we still have
5.
quorum if everyone can attend, so we'll need confirmation on attendance. I think we also, I think there is a plan to, when the other recruitment went out, the most recent recruitment that included Commissioner Hero as the appointee, there had been a plan at that time. So we'll have to check with the clerk's office to see, if there are any updates to that. But I think if everyone will reach out to confirm that everyone can attend this next Planning Commission meeting, because provided we don't get another Planning Commissioner in the meantime, we will need perfect attendance in order to have the meeting.
Right. Well, we could go all the way down to 4, but that would require unanimous vote.
Unanimous vote, correct.
Yeah. So we want to be careful to give every applicant their full due. About city council actions?
Yes, I'll report on those, and unless Andrew is still on the call. There was just the one meeting, and that was actually took place last night. And so a couple things related to Planning Commission actions. There was an affordable housing agreement with TOD Brokaw for the 725 unit apartment project located at 1205 Coleman Avenue. So that's the Coleman Gateway. And there was also an approval of a tentative parcel map for 5407 and 5409 Stevens Creek Boulevard. That's the Perry Arriaga project, and it's been leased by Apple. And so that, because it's a parcel map, it doesn't come before the Planning Commission. The development did because it was a PD zoning, but the map just goes straight to City Council. And then there was an action on a tentative parcel map for 2250 Lawson Lane. That was also approved on consent by City Council. And then on the public hearing items, there was an amendment to the Tasman East specific plan to replace the proposed street extension for Calle del Sol with a pedestrian and bicycle paseo. This is the specific plan amendments that you saw previously. And so ultimately, there was some discussion. There was also an amendment to the transit neighborhood zoning district to allow non-residential uses within the first 3 floors of the mixed-use buildings and to correct an error regarding the permissible density ranges. And then the adoption of the override of the Airport Land Use Commission determination of inconsistency with the San Jose Airport Comprehensive Land Use Plan. And that was approved for the staff recommendation 6-0. There was a fair amount of discussion on that item, but ultimately it was supported. And then there was also a resolution approving the findings for the Tasman East Specific Plan Infrastructure Impact Fee Nexus Study and setting the rates for the infrastructure impact fee, and then action on the ordinance adding amendments to chapters 15 and 17 of the Santa Clara City Code. So an establishment of the Tasman East Infrastructure Improvement and related budget action. So that was approved 6-0. So again, there will be an infrastructure fee associated with that area, and that was actually approved with a 6-0 vote. And that's it.
Excellent, thank you. So we're up to that magical time where a motion might be made for adjournment. I see Commissioner Jain.
Anthony, you want to do this, or?
I will second the motion proudly.
Okay. Move to adjourn.
Okay. Is an out of order motion, but I understand it. Thank you. Move to adjourn. All we needed to do was vote on it. before
Motion
we
to
had the motion.
adjourn. Commissioner Ikezi,
Aye.
Commissioner Jain,
Yes.
Chair Saleme,
Yes.
Commissioner Becker,
Yes.
Commissioner Biagini,
Yes.
Commissioner Cherukuru,
Yes.
Commissioner Hero.
Aye.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all. It's been a great time. I think it's going to be great too going forward with 2 new people. So
And, happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy
cheers.
Happy
Yeah, happy
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Stay